let's get into this, guys. You've heard about this story. I've heard about this story. The whole goddamn country at this point has heard about the story. A student at the University of Oklahoma, Samantha Fulnecky. That's a tough name. I feel kind of bad for Fulnecky. I don't know. It's just like not a cool name. Who's a tennis? I think she's a tennis player at the University of Oklahoma from Missouri. In national news, because she wrote a paper for a class on gender, and the professor, who was a graduate student, gave the paper a 0 out of 25. The student then snitched to Turning Point USA, that is Erica Kirk's political organization, and Turning Point USA snitched to everyone else. And now all of the conservative, God-fearing babies in the world are up in arms about free speech and freedom of religion because a student wrote a bad assignment. And it looks like thus far, we can check in on this later, the probably very poorly paid, without union rights, graduate instructor has been suspended for this, which is crazy, you know? So let's look at Turning Point USA. Again, this is Erica Kirk's organization. And this is their Oklahoma University. OU, more like, oh boy. For a psychology course at the University of Oklahoma, Samantha Fulnecky was asked to write a 650-word essay reacting to an article about how people are perceived based on societal expectations of gender. Before you ask, of course, we're going to read the essay. She argued traditional gender roles should not be considered stereotypes. She cited the Bible to support her stance. Like, in most subjects, it doesn't make sense to cite the Bible. If you are in a biblical studies class, sure. Theology, obviously. Literary analysis, I could see analyzing the Bible from the POV of a literary text or taking a critical analysis to the text itself. If you are in a like social science class, the Bible, aka La Biblioteca, I know that's not what that means. Not really. So she received 0 points out of 25. I like how they have to say transgender professor, because you know, what's going on here is these people like hate transgender people, and so they always have to lead with that. It's like, of course, you know, the evil transgender professor. Very silly. Mel Curtis said that she failed to use empirical evidence and called parts of her essay offensive. This is a note from the professor, who said, to call an entire group of people demonic is highly offensive, especially a minoritized population. I don't disagree. Fulnecky says she followed the assignment's guidelines, shouldn't be penalized. And of course, at Turning Point OU, they're standing with Samantha. This professor lacks the intellectual maturity and take grading. What are you talking about? You're saying the professor lacks intellectual. Wait till we read this. Professors like this are the very reason that conservatives can't voice their beliefs in the classroom. Kudos to Samantha for leading by example. So like the gist here is that a student was asked to respond to a reading in a response essay. I've done these assignments. I've assigned these assignments. I've graded the assignments after I signed them. I'm sure many of you have. I mean, I feel like the real gist here is, you know, if I'm looking at a student's piece of work that does this, I want to see evidence that you have engaged with the text in question. And if you are using external sources, I want to see that you're doing a sort of critical analysis, that you're saying, okay, so the text that we read said this, but this scholar takes a different perspective. Here's why that's interesting. That's awesome. That's just kind of doing academic writing in a really standard way. Thank you to Raycon for sponsoring this video. Now, when I'm working on video edits or recording music, I like to use over-ear headphones so I'm totally immersed in the sounds that I'm hearing. But lately, I've learned this can go very wrong if I'm listening to music and podcasts when I'm outside the house. Because recently, while wearing massive headphones that meant I couldn't hear anything else, I almost got hit by a car, and also ignored a friend who was trying to say hi to me, which made me feel kind of like a jerk. But not anymore, because I'm now using these Raycon Essential Open Earbuds. With these, I can catch up on my favorite podcast or new audiobooks while also hearing what's going on around me. These are especially nice if I'm walking around the neighborhood or going to grab a coffee, because wearing them doesn't preclude the possibility of participating in social community, which is pretty important when we're fighting the ongoing effects of an alienating digital economy. But I digress. Right now, these headphones are up to 20% off for the holidays. So it's a great time to grab yourself a pair, whether you need a mellow option for the gym when you're working at home or just taking a walk around the block. I really dig how light these things are. It makes them super easy to take with me wherever I go. And this ear hook part rotates, so I never have to worry about them falling out. Raycon has over 3 million customers, and honestly, the sound quality is just as good as a lot of the way more expensive brands. If you don't like them, don't worry about it. They have a 30-day guarantee. They're also super easy to switch between your phone and your laptop without having to repair each time. You know, they're lightweight, so they're super comfortable to wear all day. And it's super easy just to toss this case in your pocket or your backpack and have them with you wherever you go. Plus, they have 36 hours of battery life with a charging case. The Essential Open Earbuds are here for the holiday season, and they're selling fast. Raycon audio products are up to 20% off this holiday season. So just click on the link in the description or go to buyraycon.com/sideburns-open to save on Raycon audio products site-wide. And if you order by December 15th, it's going to guarantee Christmas delivery, which is nice because, you know, good gifts shouldn't show up late. So click the link in the description, go to buyraycon.com/sideburns-open to get up to 20% off during this holiday season. Let's look at the essay. I think that's the most fair thing we can do here is look at the essay in question, judge it on its own merits. We're not just going to let headlines tell us what to think. Okay. This is an academic show. You know, this is a group of teachers, scholars, poets, artists. So here we go. This article was very thought-provoking and caused me to thoroughly evaluate the idea of gender and the role it plays in our society. Cool. The article discussed peers using teasing as a way to enforce gender norms. I do not necessarily see this as a problem. I don't like that. Like right off the bat, I'm not saying that's that's just a bad take. That you're a college student, you're 21 years old, and you read an article that talks about bullying used to enforce gender norms, and you say that's not a problem. You're like, I think it's okay that we bully people. That's weird. And now this is sentence 3. God made male and female and made us differently from each other on purpose and for a purpose. Oh, did he, Samantha? God made male and female and made us differently from each other on purpose and for a purpose. What was that purpose and what is that purpose? Like, you just don't get to say in academic writing, like, God said so. God is very intentional with what he makes. And I believe trying to change that would only do more harm. Gender roles and tendencies should not be considered stereotypes. This is fucked, man. Women naturally want to do womanly things because God created us with those womanly desires in our hearts. The same goes for men. God created men in his image of his courage. Oh, because that's capitalized so we capitalize his and he because it's God. His courage and strength. And he created women in the image of his beauty. So women are created in the image of a hot dude. He intentionally created women differently than men, and we should live our lives with that in mind. So thus far, this is a person who's just I'm going to use the proper academic terminology here. She's just like saying shit. You know what I mean? She's just saying shit. And, you know, you could, if you wanted to be good at this, and this is why when the Turning Point USA statement says something like, this is why it's so combative for conservatives in those classrooms. No, the issue is, if you really want to come into a classroom, especially a social science classroom taught by a trans professor, and you really want to try to argue for like the theological necessity of strict gender bifurcation or whatever, like you can do that referring to text and scholarship from that field. I'm not saying it's good, but like you could try to make the argument. And I think if you try to make the argument, then you give the professor something to respond to and you can kind of do something with that. But if you're just saying shit, well, what can a professor even do with that? How can you respond to that? It is frustrating to me when I read articles like this and discussion posts from my classmates of so many people trying to conform to the same mundane opinion. I like how the same mundane opinion is that like trans people can exist. Wouldn't the same mundane opinion be that we all believe in a sort of gender narrative that emerged in the book of Genesis? So they don't step on people's toes. I think it's a cowardly and insincere way to live. I'm currently working on the follow-up video on Christianity, and a thing I'm realizing about the current right-wing Christian movement is they're really obsessed with how they're like courageous and tough and strong. It's important to use freedom. Okay, this is great. It is important to use the freedom of speech we've been given in this country. And I personally believe that eliminating gender in our society would be detrimental. So here's another confusion we have in a lot of discourse in this country. And let me just say this. America's getting so dumb. And I'm not trying to do a thing where I'm like individual people are dumb. Like America is at a structural level getting dumb. And there are structural reasons for this, and they're very bad. So we're not here just to say like Samantha is bad. Like Samantha sucks. I'm comfortable saying a 21-year-old sucks. I'm not gonna say anything meaner than that, but she sucks. But these people are obsessed with the idea that freedom of speech means that anyone can say anything they want in any context without research, credibility, or information to back those opinions up. There's some health conference. I saw a clip of this recently where the guy who invented a bulletproof coffee, and I think it's coffee, you put butter in the coffee, a scientist or a doctor was like, hey man, you said all this stuff, and scientifically speaking, it's all bullshit. Would you care to respond? And the guy's like, I would care to respond by saying, I love the First Amendment. Like, that's not a good response, right? When you are operating in a specific field of study, whether you're a professional in that field or you're a student in that field, that is the discourse in which we're participating when you are debating or having discussion. So I can't just go to a scientist and be like, well, your opinion is this, but because of the First Amendment, God created dinosaurs and God put the dinosaur bones in the ground and Satan tricked us. She believes that eliminating gender in our society would be detrimental. I'd be curious if the article in question said, let's eliminate gender. And it pulls us farther from God's original plan for humans, which is what? It is normal for kids to follow gender stereotypes. Okay, this is awesome. It is normal for kids to follow gender stereotypes because that is how God made us. Like, how do you know, Samantha? The reason so many girls want to feel womanly and care for others in a motherly way. I just can't imagine raising my daughter in such a way that like 19 years from now or whatever, she's like, I just want to take care of people in a motherly way. God created and chose them to reflect his beauty and his compassion. In Genesis, let's see, okay, so this is the first seemingly text reference in the piece. Like the stream if you haven't already. And it's to the book of Genesis. God says that it is not good for man to be alone, so he created a helper for man, which is a woman. Many people would assume the word helper to be condescending. However, the original word in Hebrew is ezer kenegdo. If anyone knows Hebrew in the chat, let us know if this is real. My guess would be that at her evangelical megachurch, a pastor did a slideshow where because this is something that like some Hebrews, some people, not Hebrews, that some people like pastors and stuff like that like to do is they like to know a word in Hebrew or a word in Greek and then use that to seem like they're smart. And I used to fall for this stuff when I was in the churchy world. Okay, so we have our Hebrew. So God likes helpers. God does not view women as less significant. He created us with intentionality and care. If leaning into the role means I'm following gender stereotypes, and I'm happy to be following a stereotype that aligns with the gifts and ability God gave me as a woman. I do not think men and women are pressured to be more masculine or feminine. What world do you live in? I strongly disagree with the idea that encouraging acceptance of diverse expressions can improve students' confidence. So you think that it would improve students' confidence to bully them. Society pushing, oh, this is good. This is real good. Society pushing the lie that there are multiple genders. Think about it, friends, that there are multiple genders. Society pushing the lie that there are multiple genders. Samantha, do you think there's just one? Is there one? Is it the omnigender of the bosom of Christ, of the original primordial unity of all that is God and God that is all? Oh, hey, hello to the person who's here that said we should do improv to be pandemic. Hell yeah. Now I'm curious. But yeah, I used to like to do improv more. I don't get to do it as much now, but there you go. But Samantha, multiple genders. Even you said there's two, and everyone should be okay. Is demonic. Yeah, calling stuff demonic is kind of weird. Like, what does that mean? So okay. I don't want kids to be teased or bullied in school. Scroll back up. The article discussed peers using teasing as a way to enforce gender norms. I do not necessarily see this as a problem. I do not want kids to be teased or bullied at school. Which one is it, Samantha? Shout out to anyone who, if you were a Sex in the City person, you would be the Samantha. I think that I want to see myself as a Samantha, but I'm probably more of a Miranda. However, pushing the lie that everyone has their own truth and everyone can do whatever they want and be whoever they want is not biblical whatsoever. So this kind of feels to me like it plays into the same logic by which conservative evangelical types are obsessed with postmodernism and the idea that there's some postmodern neo-Marxist DEI gender philosophy thing that argues against the existence of truth or identity. The weird thing is that these people are arguing against the idea that people without evidence, historical research, factual citation can just say that the world works however it wants because it fits their worldview. That's what she's doing, though. Like, what is more, if we're going to use the term in the way that those people use it, what is more postmodern than just being like, I know how the world works because God, I've decided it. I've decided how God works. This is how God operates. Let me tell you how God does God stuff. Like, that's pretty that's pretty like abstract subjectivity. That's pretty deciding what is true on the basis of what I want to be true. The Bible says that our lives aren't our own. I live my life based on this truth and believe there would be less gender if they were raised knowing that they do not belong to themselves, they belong to the Lord. I don't want God to own me. Overall, reading articles such as this one encouraged me to one day raise my children knowing that they have a heavenly Father who loves them and cherishes them deeply, and then having their identity firmly. So I want my children to know that they have a holy Father who loves them and cherishes them, except if they're a girl and want short hair and don't wear bras. Now, I just want to be clear again. I'm not trying to hold this to an insane standard. This is an undergraduate. This is an undergraduate paper, but this is a person at an institute of higher education in the United States of America. She ends her paper. My prayer for the world, and specifically for American society and youth, is that they would not believe the lies being spread from Satan that make them believe they are better off as another gender than what God made them. I pray that they feel as God loves and acceptance as who he originally created them to be. You don't need to end your response with a prayer. You know what I mean? Like, and in closing, I pray, like, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? Like, someone, I see this in the chat. Someone said she definitely took this class to stir up trouble. 100%. 100%. If you're like an evil evangelical Christian or whatever, and you have this view and you take a class to say shit like that, you're just trying to be a shit starter. So much of this Turning Point USA shit, shout out to my queen Erica, is just people starting shit for the sake of starting shit, which is nuts. Now I saw someone in the chat say this, and I think that there's a world where I could see the argument that she shouldn't have gotten a 0 out of 25. For example, if I was a professor in this instance, I would not give a 0 because they turned something in. I mean, that's how low the standard can be sometimes. But I'd give her like a 5 or something. You know what I mean? Just to kind of give them an F, just to be like, you did a piece of work. You thought you were doing the assignment. I'm going to explain to you why you, in fact, did not do that assignment. So let's look at the response to this. So that was her essay. And Turning Point USA, again, shouts to Erica, trans professor's response. Like, would they use the term? We all see what they're doing here. Oh, my headphones hurt. Okay, so this is Mel. Mel said, please note, I'm not deducting points because you have certain beliefs, but instead I'm deducting point for you posting a reaction paper that does not answer the question for this assignment, contradicts itself, that is true, heavily uses personal ideology over empirical evidence in a scientific class. Ooh, if it's a scientific class, we don't just get to be like, I mean, think about it this way. If this is a social science class and she's using that, what if she was in geology? She was just like, actually, professor, the earth isn't as old as you say it is because, you know, while you are entitled to your own personal beliefs, and this is important with all this, like, with all this First Amendment shit, believe whatever dumb shit you want, Samantha and co. Fulnecky. Believe whatever we can all believe. Dumb shit. I believe some dumb shit. You believe some dumb shit. If anyone wants to share dumb shit they believe in the chat, this is a safe space for that, or at least I try to make it a safe space for that. But that's totally different than participating in academic discourse where you are trying to train yourself to learn how to think within the certain parameters of a field of study. It doesn't mean you have to be a professional psychologist or sociologist, but we're trying to learn those discourses so we understand how they work and they can help us be better humans at understanding the world around us. There's an appropriate time or place to implement then in your reflections. Like you don't need to pray. I encourage all students to question or challenge the course material with other empirical findings or testable hypotheses. Crucial. If you are in a social science course, think about it this way. The lingua franca of that course is that given social science. So if you're in a sociology class and we're talking about gender from that perspective, you could find, I'm sure, some like conservative Christian sociologist who tries to make similar arguments to you in that lingua franca. At least try to do something like that. But using your own personal beliefs to argue against the findings, but not only the findings of psychology, biology, sociology, not best practice. You argue that abiding by normative gender roles is beneficial. It's perfectly fine to believe this. But then to say that everyone should act the same, blah, blah, blah. Since your arguments reflect religious pressure, you can say that strict gender norms don't create gender stereotypes, but that isn't true by definition of what a stereotype is. Please note that acknowledging gender stereotypes does not immediately denote a negative connotation, a nuance this article discusses. And that's the thing too, like we didn't read the article, but that response didn't really show me a lot or tell me a lot about the original article. To call an entire group demonic is highly offensive unless they're Australians. I'm just kidding. Aoife, if you're up, good morning. Especially a minoritized population, you are entitled to your own beliefs, but this isn't a vague narrative of society pushes lies, but instead the results of countless years. I mean, I'll say like, it's nice that the professor has taken this much time to respond. I implore you to apply some more perspective and empathy in your work. If you personally disagree with the findings, then by all means share your criticisms, but make sure to do so in a way that is appropriate and using the methodology of empirical psychology as aligned with the learning goals in this class. If you have any additional questions or concerns about this or like some additional educational resources, this is a good, I would not have gone 0 out of 25. I think this is a great response. Oh, and this is the other instructor for the course. So Megan Waldron, and she says that the paper should not be considered a completion of the assignment. So those are the professors there. There's Samantha's essay, which we already looked at. I think, is this the grading criteria? Okay, let's see. So it's graded on a 25-point scale. Okay, so 10 points is, does the paper show a clear tie-in to the assigned article? I would say 0. Does the paper present a thoughtful reaction or response to the article rather than a summary? 10 points. 0. Is the paper clearly written? 5 points. So maybe I'd give it 3. Like, it's written. You know what I mean? Like, it is, the paper is written. There are words on a page, you know? Justin in the chat, another reminder that our institutions are succumbing to late stage capitalism. They want to lower admission standards and don't hold students to academic standards because that hurts revenue. Yeah. And that's why, like, in this instance, the person who's probably going to suffer the most from this is the professor. Is the professor. That's the person who's probably going to get screwed. And then this person, the woman who said all this stuff, she's now making herself into a little type of celebrity person on the right, because that's what these people do. Like, it's like you start shit on the basis of some ridiculous opinion that you probably don't even believe, to then make some stink about how Christians are oppressed or attacked or something like that, so that Erica Kirk's Turning Point USA can make a big thing out of it, so that you can like drop out of school and become an influencer and be like the bad swimmer who gets paid to go to schools and be like, I was 5th in the race, but if the trans people weren't born, I would be 4th. Still wouldn't have podiumed, but I'd be 4th or something like that. So this is from one of my favorite news sources, Fox News. So yeah, she directs others to push back. It says she was asked to read, this is like her quote, "I was asked to read an article and give my opinions on the article. And the article was about gender binary and mental health and gender stereotypes, specifically in children, because it's a lifespan development class. So I was asked to give my opinion and my reaction to the paper." Opinion is like again, your opinion on the paper, given the framework and the language of the class and discipline in which you are operating in. Her classmates were tasked with writing a response to a scholarly article. I'm sure she read it too. She did this assignment as I would do any other in that class, gave my opinion on gender binary, and gender stereotypes. And that naturally my views are from the Bible and my Christian kind of worldview. And so that's what I wrote about. And I didn't think anything of it. This is another problem you have sometimes with Christian kids. And I say this as someone who dabbled in that world. Shout out to anyone who watched my recent video. There is a way in which Christianity in America, especially evangelical Christianity, presents itself as like an all-consuming, all-encompassing type of knowledge that transcends the specificity of a belief system. So that like faith and reason aren't different things for these people. Faith is reason, right? Reason is transcended by faith. In other traditions, in the Christian world and other elements of faith, I know most about the Christian world. We could look at faith and reason as working together. I think the contemporary Catholic Church would take a view closer to that. But when you have a faith tradition that says that faith and revelation supersedes everything else, you're creating this type of belief-based epistemology in which someone will construct an entire, epistemological worldview on the basis of stuff that Pastor Ricky said. And I'm not trying to be silly when I say that, but when this young woman, who I do not think reads Hebrew, starts saying like, well, in Hebrew, this word means like, no, Pastor Ricky told you that once and you wrote it down in your notes app. And now you're presenting it as some form of scholarship, even the way she refers to scripture is like, oh, it says in Genesis, like, you got to give me a little bit more than that. And it's so dangerous because like, there's so much post 9/11 talk in America about the quote unquote, like violent irrationality of Islam or whatever. But if you look at like what religious tradition in the United States of America and, around the world right now is the most irrational, the most connected to various types of social and literal violence. You know what I'm saying? You guys know what I'm saying? It might be this one. It might be a little bit of a little white jihad we got going on here. Or did I meant to see white Al-Qaeda? I don't know. Christian Al-Qaeda. So she says that God made her female. God is intentional what he makes. Blah, 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 blah. We hate that. Oh, yeah. The essay refers to Genesis, the first book of the Bible. See if there's anything else. The grading rubric gives that criteria. She received a 0 from her teaching assistant. He left submission comments saying my work. Ooh. So I just want to note that we looked at the response from the professor, and I think it said the pronouns were she, they. And now when talking to the news, this human being who doesn't believe in bullying, but does believe in bullying, decided to misgender the person in a way that's clearly an attack on them and their identity, thus implying that their gender identity doesn't exist or isn't valid. It's just a little fucked up. And I love how she misgenders her professor to then criticize the professor for saying they needed more empathy. Things like, if I'm going to argue against the consensus of every medical field, then I need empirical. Yeah, that's fair. That is fair. If you are going to argue against the consensus of every scientific field, you need more than vibes. Let's see. You may personally disagree. She didn't like that she said dysmonic. Fulnecky. So she escalated the school's administration. The university released a statement. The University of Oklahoma this is great. This is why I love America, guys. The University of Oklahoma takes seriously concerns involving First Amendment rights, certainly including religious freedoms. Religious freedom doesn't mean the freedom to use your religious beliefs as a way to get out of thinking and reading. You know what I mean? Like if you're in a chemistry class and someone's like trying to, and just a note, I know nothing about science, so I'm just going to say some stuff. Let me cook for a second. But if you're in a chemistry class and they're like, oh, describe the polymer molecular bonds between these two chemical entities, I can't just be like, God did it. You know, like you can't give responses that just sound like DJ Khaled album titles to these sorts of things. It's such a confusion of the spheres. The TA had been placed on administrative leave. That's insane. That's insane. Fulnecky, who says she doesn't believe conservative. Yeah, I'm sure conservative opinions aren't well tolerated at the University of Oklahoma. Let's see. Oh yeah, and then Ryan Walters is the guy we've talked about before in this channel, who is the one that made like Oklahoma schools carry Trump Bibles. Let's see what he has to say. Samantha Fulnecky is an American hero. She stood firm in her faith despite the radical attacks from the Marxist professors at the University of Oklahoma. The OU staff involved should be immediately fired, and OU should now be receiving taxpayer dollars. They continue assaults on faith. The war on Christianity is real, and we will not be silenced. I need to save this. Oh, you guys are seeing me do my high level research. I need to save this for something that I'm working on because that's too good. That's too good. So they're taking, just to be clear, they're taking an instance of someone in a psychology class using the Bible and the vibes of Pastor Rick as truth. They're saying that that is a stand against the onslaught of the Marxist professors who are at war on Christianity in America. Dog, you ended your paper with a fucking prayer. What'd you think was going to happen? Fulnecky? You idiot. Sorry, I feel bad calling it. I don't know. Should I feel bad calling a 21-year-old who's doing this an idiot? She said, this is how she's dealing with her oppression. It can be pretty scary, but Jesus is always worth standing up for. No one came at Jesus, dog. No one came at Jesus. I encourage those people that are dealing with something similar to push back against that behavior and fight for university change. Don't go. I mean, like, so I do know this. I know that this person, because her mom's been all involved in the news and she's a real fucking goofball, is like a lawyer and seems successful. Go to Bible college. Like if your desire is to be fully educated in a context in which the Bible is taken to be the font of scientific, sociological, psychological, blah, blah, blah truth, then go to Bible college. Go to one of the colleges where boys walk on one side and girls walk on the other side, and there's no third side. You know what I mean? Just go there. Liberty University, Bob Jones University. There's others. List them in the chat. There's a place for you, Fulnecky. There's a place for you. Yeah, okay. So I see someone bringing this up in the chat. Yeah, her mom is a January 6th lawyer. That doesn't mean that her mom's a lawyer who passed the bar exam on January 6th. It means that her mom is someone who's defended the January Sixers. I'm sure the mom's a real piece of work. Well, sir, this is so good. I mean, I'd rather have my integrity and give my true opinion and get a 0 on an assignment than have to lie about what I really believe. Like, if you make me in a class read The Old Man and the Sea, and I don't fuck with The Old Man and the Sea, I'm not lying by just being like, I didn't like The Old Man and the Sea. Here's why in the terms of literary analysis. If I'm like, I didn't like The Old Man and the Sea because Jesus wasn't a main character. Jesus is important for me. He's the light of my life. He made one gender. You know, she says God loves the teaching assistant despite the grade. Wow. Thanks, God. God who's in the heavens, who's so fucking concerned about your grade on this 650-word reading response assignment, but God, even in spite of that, still loves the teaching assistant. Dude, this is dark. I think I would say that God loves him. I'm sad that they're offended by the truth of the gospel. Like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing here, man? Like, you just got to be a little transphobic on the way out to let everyone know that you're a next to, you know, it's tough. It's tough. And you know, like it's a messed up scenario. that this is the world that we live in. It's a messed up scenario that, poorly paid graduate instructors are now potentially going to be losing their jobs, getting suspended from their work because supposedly, um, because they're doing discrimination by saying you can't just randomly quote the Bible. Like, what's happening? Where does this end? That's the scary thing. Where does this end? Where is there any sort of like control communist language? But like, what is the end game here, and why? Like, why are we becoming so goddamn dumb? And I get it. We all have vibes. We all have things that we want to be true. We all have opinions that we like or intuitions that we enjoy. But the idea that in this country, like that you decide what your belief is and you're a teenager and you go to college to reinforce that belief because you're under attack for your belief, even though you're from this like fucking big white Christian capitalist country. And then you make yourself a martyr because of that thing. Like, what are we doing? And we're already in a situation where universities over the past, since Trump won, came to power, are like cutting humanities subjects or cutting social science subjects or getting rid of anything that has to talk about class or gender or race or radical politics or anything like that. Like, what the fuck are we doing? And it's just this feeling, you guys might feel this, it just feels like there should be an adult in the room, whether that's a chair of a university department or the president of a university, who just says, everyone shut the fuck up. Everyone shut the fuck up. It was a psychology class. Her reading response to the psychology reading talked about the devil multiple times and called people demonic and didn't quote any academic sources and just said vibe stuff about God and said that there's only one gender. I'm sorry, guys. It's a bullshit assignment. This is stupid as fuck. A lot of students are stupid as fuck these days. Better to do a ChatGPT essay. I don't know. We have a crisis in academia, but like, come on. Like, come on. And with that, I pray, dear God, help all of the people out there that think they're doing God stuff when they're just being little pieces of shit. Help them see that they're not doing God stuff, that they're just addicted to a type of self martyrdom and persecution, which gives them a sick type of psychic pleasure, which they can't realize because these people probably don't believe in the existence of the unconscious, even though they're so driven by unconscious forces. Help them see that it's like cool to be a person and just to be like a person to other people. That's like a chill ass thing to do. And they could just be like that. And maybe help these people, I don't know, like smoke weed or like go to a concert that makes them feel good, or I don't know. Amen. Hey, thanks for watching this. In case you didn't know, I have a main channel where I post video essays and stuff like that. It's just called Michael Burns. There's a link. Would love for you to check that out. If you want to support the channel more, I have a Patreon. You can also hit up either of my beverage partners. There's Yes Please Coffee, who make the best gosh darn coffee in the world. You get 15% off with the code Burns Beans. And of course, my beloved new non-alcoholic beer sponsor, Years Beers. It's really good. There's a link below, and if you use it, you get 10% off your first order. So thank you so much. And if you ever want to watch these streams live, I'm live every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Pacific. Okay, now it's really over. So now you can go. I'm going to finish this. Now it's over. I'll see you guys for the next one.